All right, so super excited to present Angel Garcia. We've been working together. How long has it been now, Angel?
About 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, awesome. And he's San Fernando Valley, if you know LA. And he had a really solid business before we started working together. Angel, why don't you start off just with an overview of kind of like a little bit about the business, personally share something about yourself, just kind of get the conversation going.
Well, I'm in the San Fernando Valley. I'm in a very competitive market. And one of the things that I was struggling a lot with coming into it was kind of creating a structure that I knew would predictably bring in business. And that was one thing I always felt was missing. So that's kind of what brought me in. My business right now, I've got a couple of buyer's agents. I got two telemarketers and then two assistants. And we'll do about 140 deals this year.
And what kind of volume is that? What kind of volume did you do before we started, and what kind of volume are you going to do now?
I think it was somewhere in the 20 million or so range. Last year, I closed out at 58 million in volume.
So almost triple the business.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And take us back to when we first started working together. What did you want to achieve when we first started working together?
So, I mean, I wanted predictability. The problem was that I had issues with tracking, so I didn't really know where my business was coming from. I was just like a workhorse. I was working a ton, but I was getting a little concerned that, that was the only way that I was going to continue bringing in income and bringing in business. And I was kind of getting scared because I didn't know if I broke my arm tomorrow, am I still going to have any sort of business? I didn't know how to get business from my past clients, really, aside from just calling them, but putting in all the different systems and structure to just kind of having the confidence and knowing that stuff was going to continue coming in was awesome. So that's
awesome. So when we first started working together, what was the complexion of the team? Was it just you, or how many people did you have?
I had hired a buyer's agent and I had an assistant.
Okay.
I had a transaction coordinator.
So you went from about 20 million, you, a buyer agent and an assistant, to two buyer agents, two telemarketers, you and an assistant.
Yeah, and then the two telemarketers that kind of grew out this year. That's kind of like the plan to dominate 2019.
Okay.
And
so,
yeah.
So you getting to 58 million didn't involve those two.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. And let's go deeper on the problems that you were facing when, and I often joke, and I do it in the boardroom because you're in our boardroom level about how young you are. Like, I think you just turned 19, or not, totally kidding. How old are you now?
I graduated high school last year, so no, I'm 26 now.
Yeah, so you're 26 now. So when we first started, well, I think you probably met me online before we started working together, when you're probably like 23 or so.
Yeah. It was funny because I went to viral marketing, like a mastermind, I think that they had, and I was watching a couple of videos. Like I ran into them somehow, and then I met certain people there that I had seen you talk to on certain interviews or something like that. And I don't know, it's somehow, some way, I kind of just got caught up in like your web of stuff and content that you had. And once I watched one of your YouTube videos, I continued to watch more of them, and they just kept popping up. And so.
Yeah. And you were saying before I hit the record button, that what would you do with the videos?
So I would watch them, and it was funny because, to me, it was like completely out of this world that someone was doing like, 350 transactions or whatever you're doing at the time. And I was completely like just confused at how that would even look. So I would watch all of your videos, and it was funny because then I started seeing that you had actual systems in place. And I would pause the videos and look at your trackers so I can see what was going on. And I was like, man, maybe there's something in here. And this guy actually tracks his stuff like in a deep level. So I would pause the video and I'd be like, okay, cool. I take notes, and then I try to create my own little spreadsheets and stuff like that. But I wasn't quite convinced that that this was for me yet. So I didn't really sign up for any coaching or anything. I just kind of wanted to see what was going on. I followed you for about a year before I got started.
Yeah, let's talk about the focus areas. What are the three, maybe four focus areas that you've really been digging into? So you've been scaling the business beyond yourself, adding people. Really, for one thing that impresses me the most about you. And it's not, when I mention your age, it's probably more out of like me wishing I had done this earlier in my lifetime. You know, we're 19 years apart, and you treat your business like you have more experience than I do. Like you knew that if you wanted to scale this thing, like if you could have room for a marriage, if you could have room for children, maybe in your future, like you knew you had to figure these things out. So let's dig into like what are the three things that you really focused on when we first started working together?
First off, that was really nice. I don't know if I treat my business better than you do or whatever comment you mentioned, but that was very nice. So thank you. The three tools that have helped me out a ton with you so far have been set, met, signed. That was a really big one for me because that kind of gave me clarity as far as what was working and what wasn't, and at what level. So I can kind of break down like, okay, so I'm setting this many appointments and I'm meeting with this many and I'm signing this many. The key part was that I began tracking, thanks to you, the source. That was huge for me because then it also told me, and this was something I didn't even think about until, maybe a couple months of tracking it, is I started realizing that I was spending like hours and hours and hours tackling down certain sources, but it also gave me clarity as far as how much time was spent between each set, met, signed. And even though I was setting, let's say, a lot of appointments with, let's say, for example, expireds, they didn't turn out to be my best use of time once I dug in a little bit deeper. So that provided a ton of clarity. Another tool was also
I'm going to slow you down on that one. So let's call that one. So the first tool or focus area, let's call it sort of the pipeline mentality of business. So lead, set, met, sign. So now you're able to look at by lead source, how many are set, met, and signed. Also by agent, how many are set, met. So you're really able to slice up the business. And
which I had no concept of before.
Yeah. So it's just treating the business like a pipeline. Like I know that if there are 12 things I can put into this machine, and now you know that 8 of them aren't worth the time and money. And these 4, for now anyway, I can put more investment of time and money into these 4 and, have a really profitable business, not profitable just money, but also profitable with a good use of time.
Right.
So that's awesome. So yeah, go ahead.
So I knew time, I knew how I was converting, and then I knew what I needed to work on. So I can see very like specifically, other than just kind of like when it was so obvious that I couldn't miss it. Like, let's say, for example, if I was going on a couple of appointments and I was setting them, but I wasn't actually ending up going to the meetings, I realized that there was a problem there, and I didn't realize that there was a problem there before. The only way I would have seen that if the gap was so wide that there was no question of it. But the thing is that gave me like the metrics that I needed to see what little changes I needed to make to get the best possible outcomes with my time.
Yeah. Awesome.
So and dig into it to the agent all the way through.
Awesome. All right. What's the second focus area that we worked on?
So the other thing and this kind of came about more recently, but it made a huge difference. This was the very beginning of last year. And this one was a real game changer. I know you don't like using the word game changer too often.
Only if it really is a game changer. That's because everyone says game. So I believe you. Since I don't like it, it's okay.
Yeah. So with caution, I'm saying that this one's a game changer for me. So I was talking to Dave Hook, and then he was sharing like this pipeline scorecard, I guess, that you guys were kind of working on. I got to look at it a little bit early. I kind of made some modifications to it because he was a lot more, he goes a lot deeper than I do, I think. So I looked at his surface level and tried seeing what I can take out of it. I created a daily pipeline scorecard. On the daily pipeline scorecard, I can track my team, and I can use it as an accountability tool to see what each team member is doing on all the things that we believe drive our business forward. And then I put it in a scorecard form to where I can see if they're hitting 100% of the minimum standard, or if they're hitting 95%, 96%, 90%. And it changes colors based on that. Well, if the color is anything other than green, then they get completely removed off of leads, which basically is kind of like a green light, red light, as far as are they ready to take on more business, or they got to stop there and they got to catch up with what they're doing.
Yeah, there's so much goodness in there. I don't know if it's every business or if it's just our industry where people think it's not what you're describing. Like in real estate, people think you can just show up and the deals are just going to come. I'm here to tell you, I wish there was an easier way. And I think you're doing that at a higher level than my team is doing that. So kudos to you for seeing that. I think that's one of the values of the mastermind.
Yeah.
There's no easy way to do business at a high level. And in our industry, if you're going to spend money or time on something, you better squeeze that thing for everything it's worth. And that's what you're doing with that pipeline scorecard. That's awesome.
I like what you said there. There is no easy way. And it's funny because, quite honestly, when I saw you doing the videos and everything, I was like, man, and you did it really fast. I think like within 8 years, you were going from, just brand new agent to doing hundreds of deals. And I admired that. I was like, no freaking way. That's incredible. And I wanted to see what that looked like. So eventually I did end up signing up with you. But it was funny because when I signed up, I almost wanted to believe in my own head that it was going to be like easy, right? That just because I got all the content and all the stuff that needs to be done, that it would be easy. Well, it hasn't been easy. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But what I love is that there's a very, very clear roadmap as far as what needs to be done. And, I'm not one to shy away from the work. I just want to make sure that it works. And that's why I stayed on it.
Yeah. And now I'm pressing upon your team with some accountability and them knowing their numbers, not as a like, hey, I'm going to come down on you and I'm going to hold you accountable, but hey, you need to know your numbers if you want to be at a high level on this team. So I think so what's the third area that you focus on? I think you mentioned something about like just daily structure or cadence with the team.
Yeah, so kind of putting a structure into the team. So what I realized is that, and I kind of just took your word for it because I didn't believe it. I thought it was, maybe just a little extra that wasn't too necessary. But I took your word on it and I just kind of implemented it, which was culture, right? So I wanted to kind of create a culture, and I realized that, and I think you had mentioned it on one of your calls, that you have to have some sort of cadence, something that happens all the time, every single time, so that way the team understands that this is, you got to build certain habits. Right. And then what starts to happen is you start building culture based off of the people that you have, seeing who's who. You can really quickly find out who's not a match during your cadence. So like every morning when we do our role plays, every single morning we're doing our affirmations, and it starts to bring out people's character. You start to see who lines up with it and who doesn't. So really quickly we can find out who ideal team members are, at least to the level that we're doing it now, and who's not. The other thing too is also going over our numbers weekly. So we dive deep into every single agent's numbers once a week, just so that way it's an open platform. They can all share what's going on. And what people start to find out is that, the problem of one is the problem of many, right? Every single, or the problem of all. They all have the same issues, maybe in slightly different ways, but they all come with the same objections, the same issues, but one will start dominating. So it's nice to see that, like when they're all in the same room and we're having these meetings, they're both going through the same struggles, yet one of them is maybe doing a lot better, which helps the other one. So that cadence has been, huge.
Yeah. And that one I'd probably, it's probably that culture of productivity and accountability, and it's definitely not for everybody. So what do you do when you line 4 guys up and one turns out not to be a fit? Do you close up shop and shut the business down and like look to leave the industry, or how do you react to finding out someone's not a fit for your team? Do you get all pity party on it, or what do you do?
No, the thing is that I think that person identifies it before I do. That person that's not a right fit, they really do identify it before I do, because as soon as they walk in, they already know. Someone can feel like really uncomfortable and they know that's not for them. Sometimes they want to attempt to try it out and keep going, and sometimes they'll put on a front. And sometimes that front works. Sometimes I won't see it, that first week. They will. They know exactly what's going on, and they're already beat mentally. They're just kind of, going through the motions a little bit until maybe they find whatever else they're going to be doing. And sometimes I don't catch it until maybe the second or third week, but they're putting on this strong front, and then sometimes they don't show up. So typically what happens is when someone's not a good culture fit, if they can't laugh like the team laughs, and not like, in a bad way, but like if they can't fit into the group, they kind of push themselves out, and then, you know, I don't usually have to fire them or get rid of them or any of that. They kind of go out on their own.
Yeah, and when we've implemented implemented a working interview where they actually get on the phone. We've implemented group interviews, a defense process, and this was like a couple months ago, we had someone start on the team because I go in on Tuesdays, and I saw her one Tuesday and I never saw her again. And she only lasted 3 days on the team, and she made it through. Like, we're pure transparency. Like, our core value interview is like, we are trying to push you away. And she
Yeah,
put up that front, like you said, through all of that. And then it's like 3 days. It's like, nope, can't do it. I'm like, how could you possibly make it? You know, she just felt uncomfortable because she knew she couldn't hang at our level.
yeah. And it's funny because I actually started to put that in first because I feel like I don't know. I feel like culture and someone fitting in to the environment is a really important. So I put that pretty early on into like the interviewing phase. Whenever I'm interviewing people for a new position, I'll bring them in, or whenever agents are calling me and asking if I'd be interested in having a new team member or whatever. First things first is, you know, I have them come into the office and put them into our calling room. So we have stations where everybody makes their calls, and it's all stand-up desks. So, you know, right away they get an idea of what the vibe is. You know, we've got motivational quotes up on the walls with like artwork and stuff on it. So it's all, I created an environment for them to be able to prospect with high energy. Got speakers in the room and everything, bells, all of it, right? So when someone comes in, they immediately know what the environment is, right? Then they start seeing how everybody interacts and what the flow of work is. If they can't see themselves doing it right off like on their first day, they'll sometimes not even come back, and that was the end of it. The ones that come back are the ones that I'm actually excited to actually meet with and talk to and go further and actually go through an interview with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the results that you've achieved. You know, what's been the impact in the business and on you personally? So let's talk about, you talked about the volume, roughly 20 million to about 60 million. Talk about time, money, stress. Like, how have the results been for you?
Well, they've been good. You know, the thing is that I haven't had, I know the direction that I'm going, and my business has been increasing pretty steadily. But the thing is that although the numbers show some strong increases, you still feel like there's a lot going on and you're always trying to put in the next thing. So what I like is that I have clarity of knowing where the business is coming from and where to look for to get additional business and what's going on and what's wrong in the business. The problem with tracking is that I always have something that I know I need to fix, and something I know I can work on, especially when I'm comparing it to all the other people in, let's say, boardroom or, you know, in the group, because some of the people have like phenomenal numbers. So like, let's say, for example, a set met signed, I can look at their metrics and I immediately know what I need to work on. You know, I know where I can get a 20% increase in my business.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you say that, and I think it's, as a high performer, a high achiever, you know, we want to sort of look at those. At the same time, I will encourage you. You know, I had a conversation with, you know, one of our boardroom members who was doing over 500 sides that found out, you know, on every closing he had from this certain lead source that starts with a Z, ends with a W, he was losing hundreds of dollars on every closing.
Yeah.
And we were able to take 21 grand out of his monthly spend with Zillow straight to the bottom line, you know, and he was happy, not a big ego guy. He was happy to take those transactions. So he went backwards in most people's eyes, but went forward in profitability. So
Yeah.
that's just encouragement. Don't always think that we all have it figured out, because, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's kind of what I got and learned, right? That even at the 500 deal mark and talking to a lot of people in the group is, you know, they're always working on something else too. So the thing is that there's a difference between, like, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of agents that get stuck. They don't know what to do to grow their business. They have no clue what they're going to do. They're just going to go out and they're going to pound it out. So they get stuck sometimes at 25 deals, 30 deals, wherever their number is, 10 deals, 5 deals, whatever that case may be. And I have people call me all the time. It's like, how do I grow my business? You know, the funny thing is that I feel that, at least with the group, And with all the stuff that I have, the stuff that's available to me now, I have such a long way to go as far as things that I know I can implement, to where I don't have questions as far as what I need to do next. It's just a matter of doing it, and it's a lot of work. So, going back to your original question, which was, how have I dealt with the stress and, all the other stuff going on? Well, there's still stress. There's still other things going on. Life is happening, but you got to continue working. And the good thing is that I know exactly where I left off. So again, it just comes back to having comfort and knowing that the roadmap that you're going on, number one, works. Number two is that you actually have one, and you know that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah. And where do you fall on the spectrum? A lot of guys in our industry have like this like obsessive focus on growth no matter what, versus like I've made a shift to like, and I mean, you're younger, to 19 years younger. Is it like frantic, like you've got to get this thing there quickly, or is it a long-term view for you? Like, where do you settle in there? Are you thinking you're behind all the time?
Yeah. I would definitely say that I'm caught up in the trap if I've always want to grow. The good thing is that I've done a pretty good job of focusing on profitability. Like, I'm not necessarily looking for just the transactions. I strongly believe that I should be making money if I'm doing more transactions. So, I operate my business that way. If it's not bringing me a return, then I cut it out. But I definitely am always under the feeling of like, man, I got to keep going. I can't, like, no matter what happens. And I tried getting that in my head. Hey, look, maybe every year is not going to be a growth year, because I've heard that a couple different times. But it bothers me, and I'm like, no. I got to figure this. I'm going to put my house for sale or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And not that this is even remotely a coaching session. There's a whole, and there's a whole bunch of ways to measure growth.
Yeah.
So I
just find that it's what excites me. It's what kind of gets me going. So
yeah, for
I
sure.
kind of use it to my advantage a little bit. That's all.
I think it's awesome. So when you mentioned that you were sort of like, took about a year of just kind of watching, sort of the free resources to finally taking a step toward, booking a strategy session. But what were some of the objections or thoughts that were in your mind, like, I'm not ready, or I almost didn't join because, like, what was going on in your mind around that time?
Well, the first is that I was already doing certain coaching, and I felt that worked. But the thing is that I didn't have the full clarity and idea behind like the team structure. I was watching a lot of your videos, and to me, it was completely foreign. Like, I had no idea about the team concept for the most part. I didn't have any idea as far as like systems to implement. And my entire idea of growing the business was, I'm going to make more contacts and I'm going to get more of it. Nothing in between, I had no idea as far as like, okay, well, I should be focusing on this lead sources. I should be going after this or after that. And when I would look at your videos, it looked like you had a real detailed plan. I wanted that. So at first, I didn't know if that was the right path, but you were the only person that really went in deep. And then you said a lot of the things that made sense to me, that resonated with me, which is focus on the profit. Right? You're always focusing on the profit, and then you showed also, removing some time. I didn't see a single way out of continuously grinding. And my entire thought was, okay, I'm doing, let's say 24 deals, 40 deals now, 50 deals, whatever the case is. Okay, cool. My only concept of growing that was I got to put in more time. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't do much more than 14 hours at this point, right? In a single day. You were the only person that I saw that was really pushing that down while still increasing profit. Right?
Yeah. And it's really sustainability. I mean, I think it took me to get to 250 sides. It was my 58, 118, 178. So my fourth full year, my third year with the team was when I did 250 sides. And that's when I committed to being 100% out of production. And then I went down to 1 day a week because it was systems based. And people think that, it's this magical thing, and it's not. You're on that same journey and you're willing to do the work. It's just not, a lot of it isn't like real glamorous. When you're talking about making sure every lead gets called X amount of times and tracking it and putting it on a screen so your agents, how less glamorous than that could you get? You know what I mean? So it's just not attractive. Like there's no sexy way to market that, except that it works. You'll get the growth. You'll be able to scale back hours and stress. And ultimately, people are going to be attracted to a thing that works, you know, where now you can give them the best path to something. So I think you're doing it right.
I mean, well, here's the thing. So it may not look sexy or as far as like the spreadsheets part of it, but the truth is that there was no question that it was working. I mean, you had a track record to prove it. So to me, that was the confidence that I needed. So when I looked at that, and I'm not joking when I said I literally watched every single one of your videos. Like you let out 2-minute videos, 5-minute videos, 10-minute videos, 30-minute videos. You let out interviews. I watched literally everything that you had. And I would pause them, go through them and see and make sure I got a good understanding. I'd replay some of them that I really liked a lot. I took my notes. I was filling up my journal, and I actually started implementing things. When I signed up with, I think it was Kyle Kirchhoff, was that your coach?
Yep.
He was my first coach for, I would say for a little while before he took off. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because he gave me like all the things that I should probably have in place and get started with. And I had already implemented everything based off of what I saw in all your videos. So that was kind of cool. And then we went on to the next, and I started with Stacy, and we started moving from there. And, you know, it was just nice to get all the free content to start with. But what pushed me over the edge was that as I implemented those couple of basic things, I immediately started to tell the difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me, what's been your favorite part of Real Estate B School and the journey?
The possibility, the idea, seeing it in front of my face. So it's kind of like someone breaking the 4-minute mile. It's hard to get that kind of exposure to people that are doing high levels of business locally, at least in my market. Yeah. So there's nobody in my marketplace that's doing over, I think, 200 transactions. Now, granted, 200 transactions could be like 200 million in our marketplace, right? Which, you know, I know that that's the case in many markets, but that's not the case in most markets. So there's nobody really doing over 200 transactions. I think 180 is the most that someone's doing here. I wanted exposure to people that are doing 400, 500, 350, 250, and I get that all day long. As a matter of fact, someone doing 200 transactions is probably on the lower end of the spectrum in the group, which was, to me, is beautiful because I get to see people in all different stages. And I have the full roadmap and the idea and the blueprint to how to do it. So it's like a full blueprint to success, and I can open it up whenever I want.
Yeah. And I'll add, I mean, of course I'm slightly biased. I feel the same way about, and the group that Angel's referring to. So I don't want everyone to run the other way. You're referring to our highest level group. So it's our $1 million plus.
Yeah.
We've got a whole nother coaching program for people that are, you know, starting with 50 sides and they're looking to, but I agree. I think Boardroom, it's one of the most humble, willing, like if it was painful for them to go from 200 to 400, they're going to make sure you know where the pain was so you don't have to do it. Like, it's not a group where like, no, it was painful for me, so I'm going to let it be painful for you.
One little thing I just want to add is, I apologize for not elaborating on as far as like the difference between the size of the group. I just got into Boardroom, so this is still a little new to me as well. But I guess I constantly also look for the people that are doing like the high numbers. But I still think it's fascinating. But as far as like someone breaking that 4-minute mile, to me, it's seeing it, making sure that it can actually happen. That does a lot for me personally. Maybe the way my personality is or the way I operate. Once I see somebody else do it, only then I can actually see myself doing it. And that's something I struggle with, but it serves me and it hurts me in certain ways, but it serves me more than it hurts me.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Let me ask you, who would you recommend Real Estate B School to and why?
So number one, someone that can and wants to see their business grow, you know, with while still being able to reduce time. So like if you're okay with not being the single agent model, because I know that there's a lot of people that do want to have a single agent model. That's the only thing. They just want to come in, make their contacts and take off. That's fine. I wanted sustainable growth, and I wanted to make sure that I can at some point start reducing the amount of time that I was putting in, because I feel like I'm doing all the work I need to do so that when I do have kids, I can really focus on them and spend time with them. And I didn't see that was going to be a possibility, especially with how aggressive my goals were. I wanted to break 100 transactions, and I knew that I was not going to be able to do it, at least not anytime soon, on my own as a single agent. And I couldn't, give any more than the 14 hours I was already putting in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, and you're 26 years old. I mean, I really do have a lot of respect for the way you're doing this and the way that you're really, you're taking the coaching with your own due diligence. You're taking the coaching from others that have done it ahead of you without an ego, without like really just with a curiosity, which is really endearing.
It's very, very difficult to have an ego when there's so many people doing so much more than you. And again, that goes back to the exposure of this group and this coaching program, is that there's so many people doing more than you. So first off, it's very difficult for me to have an ego just off that alone. And then the other thing too is that, I found a lot of role models in the group. So when I find these role models, I notice that neither of them have egos, even the ones that are at the top of the totem pole, right? So it's nice to see that they're always open to share.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
why should I?
Yeah, and if you're listening or watching this, there's so many good things that Angel talked about. The one thing I want to sort of highlight is that if you're at the point where what you're doing is not sustainable, and you're not done with growth, like you want to grow, but what you're doing isn't sustainable. That is the sole reason why Real Estate B School exists. We didn't start this coaching company, it's 6 years ago now, because we wanted to teach new agents how to get busy. Like, it's not what we do. It's agents that have already achieved a traditional level of success, and you don't know what that next step looks like. You don't have a network of folks that have done it ahead of you and done it in a way that they have a business worth owning. A lot of these teams now are posting these huge numbers. I've talked to some of them about their profitability. I've talked to them about what the business really is. And it's a loose collection of agents. They're not serving buyers and sellers at a high level. And it's not what we're building. It's not the path that Angel's going down.
One thing I like is that your focus has always been on profitability. And I forgot to mention this when we talked about it earlier, was you've basically, and again, all on your videos and everything else, you've talked about how you can ask an agent a couple of different questions when you see someone doing big numbers, and then you really can find out what their profit is just by asking them a couple of basic questions like cost of sales, things like that. First off, those are terms that I wouldn't have understood without being a part of the coaching. Once I learned them, it gave me a lot of power, because then I started realizing who was worth following and understanding and learning from. Because I would see agents and that I would network with in other groups, and they were doing big numbers. But it was funny because when I would ask them certain numbers, like for example, cost of sales, how much are you paying your agents, and how much are you paying for this? I already knew what they were making, and then I was like, wow, I don't want to do that. Some people were paying their agents like 65-70% on the deal, and I'm like, so you're giving money to grow your team. So like you're paying money out, and you're actually the only profit you're making is on your own production, and you're actually giving away 25% of your own personal profit to give it to your team, is basically what you're telling me. Now I wouldn't say that, but I would look at them and just like, what are you doing? But at first glance, I was like, man, you're doing so much business, and I wanted to learn from them. But then I get my notepad out and I ask them these questions. I'm like, oh, that was all I had for you today.
Yeah. And what's funny on that? It was probably when I was a little more impressionable, but I still knew that set of questions. And it was with a girl who ran a big business in, I want to say it was Austin, but maybe it wasn't. And I got into like the first question. I'm like, how much you paying your agents, on average? She's like 70. I'm like 70 anything. And I'm like,
yeah.
And then she was on Apple's website. She had just done a talk in front of 5,000 agents, exposed brick in the office. And I'm just like, so I know that she's like rolling out a ton of technology, and exposed brick anywhere is expensive. Like lots of glass and exposed brick and like $4,000 chairs. I'm like, and then she launched a product on how to build wealth through business. And she had single digit profit. On the low side of single digit profits in her real estate team. And it wasn't a team.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so yeah, so there's a lot of sort of teaching in there. Just make sure you're following the right people that are modeling what you want to have, and not just in business, also just in other areas. Like, make
Yeah.
sure they're just stand up. If it's not me, great, but make sure it's somebody that you really can appreciate, you know, how they've lived out their life.
Yeah, and I'm glad that that I heard that early on, because without that, you know, my first thought, especially being young, and this is maybe I'm guessing a personal thing, but maybe other people can benefit from hearing this, is I had a like I was concerned with the amount of value that I was providing the agents that I was bringing on, and I thought that the only way to solve that was the split, right? So what happened was I listened to what you were saying, and I just kind of stuck with it, and I wanted to just make sure I just stuck to whatever you were telling me to do, because I figured that you're doing it and it's working for you, I might as well give it a shot. And that was really hard for me, because I really didn't know how to, number one, present value as far as working with me. And then number two, you know, actually providing whatever value I did have. So I stuck to it. I just stuck with the margins that you that you laid out, and it worked out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so if this conversation is scary and encouraging, like if you've already achieved at a level where, you know, you've got money, but you don't have time, you have lots of stress, and you've sort of hit that plateau, it's just go to Real Estate B School. The only thing you could do as a next step with us is have a conversation with us. There's no hard sell. Either you're a fit, your mindset has to be a fit with what we do. And like Angel said, it's not everybody. So go to realestatebschool.com. Angel, I really do admire you in a lot of ways. And the way I see you attacking your business, just keep doing what you're doing, and just knowing that there really isn't an easy path. And every little thing you're doing, and the holes you're filling in the business on a daily basis, it's the entire business. I mean, it's what's gonna lead you to have complete freedom. You know, you're recently married too, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So doing this work now, I mean, you're going to have a level of freedom that most people couldn't possibly imagine, you know, and I think you're going to have like 7 or 8 kids was the plan, or?
Yeah. I mean, we're Hispanic, so we're probably gonna have like 12, 15. I'm just kidding. I come from.
So I appreciate your brother, and I know this is going to serve a lot of people. So I'll talk to you soon. Go to Real Estate B School if this hit home for you. We'll talk to you later, brother.
Thank you. I'll see
All
you.
right.